Becky Pepper Jackson will have her day in court, the United States Supreme Court. The International Olympic Committee says they're ready to ban trans women from elite sports as soon as middle of next year. But that's not the only issue on the docket. Our spotlight interview, Johanna Harper, perhaps the world's foremost researcher on trans people in sport. We take a look inside a woman who's data-driven. Hello again, everybody. This is Transpositions Sports. I'm Karleigh Chardonnay-Webb. Right up front, the United States Supreme Court has set Tuesday, January 13th, 2026 as the day for oral arguments to be heard in West Virginia versus BPJ. The case centered around the state's Save Women's Sports law. And now high school sophomore Becky Pepper Jackson, the Bridgeport, West Virginia teen, has been fighting with her state for her participation in school sports for almost 5 years now. Now in 2024, the Fourth Circuit ruled that the law violates both Title IX and is unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause. Now both questions will be decided in this case by the nation's high court. Now that decision would affect the status of such laws that are currently in effect in 28 states. Now the law in the case and this young defendant have been the cornerstone of confrontations on the debates over transgender inclusion in school sports here in the United States. One of the biggest opponents has been the current West Virginia governor, Patrick Morrisey. He was the attorney general back in 2021 who filed the initial complaint. And the issue was a key piece of his candidacy for governor last year, including directly criticizing Jackson's participation in school sports.
You have people, this came up in Bridgeport recently, that someone is doing a shot put. I praised the little girls who walked off and didn't compete because they have to face a male. You don't want little girls to be facing hulking males in the locker rooms.
And he hasn't let off since, even after being elected. When Jackson qualified for the state high school track and field championships in West Virginia last spring, he said, quote, "A boy is competing in girls' sports at the high school state track meet. It's wrong and unfair, and I'm urging officials to keep separate scores so that the true winners can be awarded when we win in court." Now, there were no protests at those championships, and Jackson became the first out trans high schooler in West Virginia history to compete in those championships, and she even earned a bronze medal in the Class AAA discus. Now, in 8th grade, she was met with protest at a county championship middle school meet that was organized by anti-trans organizations, and it drew national attention, including the attention of a certain
Riley
a real American transphobe.
Riley Gaines there.
The International Olympic Committee is set to announce a ban on transgender women in female competition in Olympics and elite sports in a decision that could come as early as the middle of next year. There was a presentation held during IOC meetings in Switzerland 2 weeks ago that highlighted data supposedly showing potential physical advantages held by transgender women and women athletes considered to have differences in sexual development. Now, the presentation, according to sources close to the IOC, shows that such advantages exist even with hormone replacement therapy, which previous policies have mandated. Now, the interesting thing about this data and about the working group that the IOC claims has been working on it, the names of the members of the working group have never been publicized, and this data outside of this press conference has never been made public. The numbers, the methodologies have never been made public. Now, that's a stark contrast to a different IOC study, an IOC-funded study in 2024, which publicly revealed all the researchers involved. People had names, they submitted to interviews, and they published their paper, and it's available to be reviewed by the sporting public. And that research concluded that transgender women may be actually at certain competitive disadvantages. Now, juxtapose that to what you're seeing from the IOC now. The findings as a whole, and this policy clashes with a great deal of IOC policy previously. Go back to 2003, Stockholm Statement, which first set up the trans eligibility rules for elite sport. Those rules also included DSD regulations. Remember, 2009, the first World Championship won by Caster Semenya. There were fights over that. There were rules that were put in place saying that she either had to undergo surgery or undergo medical intervention to lower testosterone levels. Another athlete who was caught on the wrong end of that, Indian sprinter Dutee Chand, took World Athletics to court over this and won her case in the court for arbitration in sport. And that led to the IOC waiving the surgery requirements and waiving much of the more stringent medical requirements and instead putting it on athletes with DSD. And it also reworked the regulations for transgender women in sports. It instituted the serum testosterone limits. Now, 2016 was the breaking point. Women's 800-meter final in Rio de Janeiro at the Olympics in Rio. The entire podium was alleged to be intersex. That led to a renewal of DSD regulations. Fast forward to 2021, you had the first out transgender athletes to compete in the Olympic Games. New Zealander weightlifter Laurel Hubbard became the first out trans woman to compete. Canadian soccer star Quinn became the first trans non-binary medalist as a defender as a part of Canada's Cinderella gold medal team in women's soccer. After those Olympics, the IOC unveiled the framework for fairness, which was a complete sea change from even the 2015 regulations. But in 2022, when they took effect, that was the same year of Leah Thomas. And her victory at the NCAA championship led World Aquatics to ban transgender women from elite women's swimming. World Athletics followed suit. World Boxing followed suit. A whole plethora of governing bodies followed suit since then. And now it's even metastasized more. Many of these same governing bodies, including the IOC, are prepared to institute sex verification testing. Now, the IOC, remember, they banned this in 1999. They got away from it because of the inconsistencies involved, because of the potential for inaccuracies involved. Even the person who found the science behind this testing, Dr. Andrew Sinclair, the scientist who found the SRY gene, he has said publicly, don't use my research for this. The IOC now are not making sporting decisions, competitive decisions, or even safety decisions. A person who can best explain where these decisions are coming from, University of Colorado professor emeritus and sports ethics and science expert, Dr. Roger Pielke. He said this at the Play Your Game conference in Finland last month, and it's worth hearing again.
Once you decide who's a woman and who's not a woman, then you're making a judgment that's ultimately a political judgment. I was an expert witness in Caster Semenya's case in 2019 before Cass, and agree or disagree with that judgment. One of the things that the judges were very careful about is they said, we're making no judgment about whether Caster is a biological male, biological female. She is, according to our standards, a woman. The only question is, does she have an unfair advantage? Sports federations face a choice, and I agree with John about not making it about Trump. I would say the federations have made it about Trump, largely because a lot of American athletes in swimming in particular, in athletics also, have appealed to the Trump administration for help in banning trans women. So if you don't want it to be about politics and Trump, then don't make it about politics and Trump. The sports organizations can handle this issue by simply saying, this is an issue within the women's category. It's only about unfair advantage. We're not going to misgender people. We're not going to call people names. We're not going to use the term biological male. We're just going to evaluate fairness.
Now, the most difficult part of all of this is a return to the Avery Brundage era. And this is something that Kirsty Coventry said she was going to do. She said she was going to get rid of transgender women in elite sports. It looks like that's going to happen. But there's also the fine print. World Athletics has already set the template. World Athletics is also will ban women with differences in sexual development. That's what sex testing is all about. And Avery Brundage Coventry has said she's prepared to institute the same things. As I've said often, See, when they're busting on me, they're not busting on me. They're really busting on cisgender women and restricting them. And that is what we're seeing here. What we're seeing here is policing who gets to be a woman in sports. I know someone else who talked about that, a certain professor at Florida State named Anna Posberg. She was on our air last month. It's worth hearing what she had to say again, too.
Sex testing is a mistake that we are making again. We fought this for 40 plus years already. In 1991 and 1999, World Athletics and the IOC were like, we actually don't need sex testing. It causes more problems than having solutions. It doesn't indicate performance. And the people who literally founded the tests that they're using, the bar body test from the 1960s to the 1990s, and then the PCR test, both the founders of those tests have come out outright and said, this is not what it's intended for. It does no good. It means nothing for performance. Don't use my science this way. So like, I don't mean to get like worked up about it because it's not worth getting worked up over, but it kind of is actually. It's completely useless. It's nonsense. It does nothing. And all it does is tell someone that they may have a condition that they didn't know before. And there's some really interesting literature around the right to not know. In the same way, like when you go to the doctor, you have the right to not get weighed because if you don't want to know your weight, depending on what you're struggling with, you have the right to not know. And by doing this kind of bar body test or this PCR testing, this sex testing, you're forcing athletes to know a condition that maybe they don't want to know beyond all the other issues in that. It's ridiculous. Like, I don't know how else to say it, and we fought this battle before. It's like a bad tape that just, like, is on repeat, like in How I Met Your Mother, the I Would Walk 1,000 Miles CD that kept playing over and over again. It's like that just won't stop playing, and it gets really annoying because you've debunked it already.
When we come back, another voice with some serious viewpoints and some numbers to back them up. Johanna Harper, our spotlight interview. She's one of the most respected and one of those erudite people on this topic in the world. And she's got plenty to say, and it's coming up. I'm Karleigh Chardonnay-Webb. This is Transposition Sports. Stay with us.
I've been called the destroyer of women's sports, and I've been called a traitor to trans people. I'm disappointed that people on both sides of this seem to feel, that I am somehow motivated by something other than science and truth and facts. And
hey everybody, I'm Kirby the Cat, and I'm the highlight producer here at Transposition Sports, because
Transposition Sports, we show highlights, and we show yours.
But a highlight producer needs highlights, and this is where you come in. If you're trans or non-binary and you're rocking in sports, I want to showcase you. If you're interested and like to know more, if you've been rocking it, the way you can send your video in, we got it in the comments. So please, make a cat happy, send your highlights in, because if you don't, we'll have to show a lot of this person's highlights.
Whoa, wait a minute. Just don't forget, Kirby, this person feeds you.
So? Wait a minute, Kitty's gonna get it 4 paws in when I'm standing on business. You thought Karleigh was the only sportscaster in this house? Think again. This is the Kirby the Cat Sports Show, and I'm Kirby the Cat, and I got the highlights from the Waterbury Women's Flag Football League Championship game on Saturday. It was a great one. Let's check them out. Starting with that trophy. Isn't that cool? It looks like a large scratching post. Stealth mode against the Lady Assassins. The Assassins with their legendary head coach, Stacey Crosby, matching wits with the Stealth mode's legendary head coach, Lori Lindo is also the coach of the Connecticut Ambush. Late in the first half, no score, Lindo going down the middle looking for the end zone, and KT Bagwell with the interception, and KT's biggest fan, Caitlin Avery, giving up the praise with the handshake, no score at half. But early second half, oh no, Assassin's bad snap. And it's looking worse. Oh, she's got to get rid of it like it's armed and ticking. Right into the hands of Caitlin Cunningham. Big interception right there. And that sets up the game-winning play. Lindo on the bootleg, and she can still scoot around a little bit. Looks like she can catch a mouse. 6-0 stealth mode, and that's all they needed. The stealth mode, winning the championship, 6-0, and taking home that big trophy. But my question for all of you is, yeah, you can play football, but can you catch a mouse? I interrupt Transposition Sports because I'm cute, and I can't. And for this message from the angry gay grandpa. You don't pay me enough for this, Karleigh.
So maybe I'll start a little bit softer. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.
Dad?
Before you say anything, I just want to apologize for what I said this morning. I've been doing a lot of thinking. If you want to change your name, if you want to wear a dress.
It's a skirt, Dad.
Skirt. I don't know the kind of support you need, but let's get you some for all this transgender stuff.
Wait. Are you serious? Dad, what is this?
Oh, this is me supporting you. This is me saying I love you. This is me not losing you.
I love you, Dad.
Love you. Holly.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Welcome back to Transposition Sports. I'm Karleigh Chardonnay Webb. Our spotlight interview tonight is a person who I respect highly. And the main reason I respect her is when it comes down to it, it's all about the numbers. And that's the way it's always been for researcher and avid runner Johanna Harper. Harper was perhaps the first in the world to actually do something that most of the studies that claim to show advantage haven't done. She actually used subjects taken from the people that are being talked about. Not extrapolations, but real hard data. And that's always been her focus. Not on ideology, not on emotion, but ultimately, she's Johanna Harper, data-driven.
The science of transgender athletic performance is in its infancy. There are currently only 6 published studies that examine trans athletes in particular. So there's a lot of work to be done.
I've read your work for a lot of years. A lot of years. What are the things that are the most missed in your findings that for some reason especially people in my industry, how did we miss that?
I think it's, from a personal point of view, I think it's unfortunate that, as I say, I'm a scientist. I am looking to find facts, and I've been called the destroyer of women's sports, and I've been called a traitor to trans people, and both of those things. I am hurt by both of those things. Sticks and stones aren't gonna, names aren't, calling me names isn't gonna hurt me. It's not gonna stop me. But I'm disappointed that people on both sides of this seem to feel that, that I am somehow motivated by something other than science and truth and facts. It's unfortunate. And yes, of course, I'm a trans person, and I would like to see trans people participating in sports. But if I thought that the data suggested that trans women and cis women weren't similar enough to be in the same category, I would say so. And so I'm hurt by that, but I'm also hurt by the fact that because, I have repeatedly said that that I think that there should be some restrictions on trans women in high-level sports, and that I don't think that that gender identity alone should be sufficient for trans women to compete in the elite athletic arena against cis women. I have seen both from the science that I've done, from my personal sport, just the changes that hormone therapy causes in the athletic capabilities of trans women. And I think that people on both sides of the spectrum underestimate just how large these changes are. It doesn't change everything about trans women, but those changes are more substantial than most people think. And so the data that I've gathered has shaped my opinion and not the other way around. Yeah.
Does it stupefy you that rather than just listen to what these things are saying, what these studies are saying, what they could say, or what the work you've done up to this point has said or not said, that people are just willing to run with what's not true and what's not there?
Yeah, it's been certainly a very discouraging few years. One of the things, from a science point of view that has been most discouraging to me is the suggestion that the studies on sex differences in sports should be the primary way that we judge trans athletes by. And look, it is true that there are many, many differences in sports between men and women. They're well documented. And I certainly absolutely acknowledge that men don't belong in women's sports. But trans women aren't men and don't perform athletically like men. And while it's true that there are differences in athletic capabilities between trans women and cis women, those differences are far smaller than the differences between trans women and cis men. And so trans women, perform athletically in a manner that's close to cis women. Trans women have some advantages, a few disadvantages too, but overall, they're not that far from the performance of cis women. But the suggestion that just because men outperform women, then cis or trans women will necessarily outperform cis women, it just doesn't hold up. And you have to have data specifically on trans women in order to make that suggestion. But that hasn't stopped several scientists and much of the public from just assuming that because men outperform women, then it's unfair to have trans women in women's sports. And that's been a really challenging thing for me, because the science that exists on trans women is limited, but the science doesn't back that general suggestion. And so it's really hard that this has taken over in the minds of the public, and the idea that trans women perform just like men is pervasive. It's not true, but it's pervasive, and it has been so damaging to trans athletes, to trans people in general, and in fact to all queer people.
You should know better than to target these people rather than targeting the actual problem in this country.
Can a woman have a penis?
Young boys are allowed to compete if they identify as women.
But when you see the photographs of Leah Thomas, 6'3", you know, with the bone structure and the build of a pretty big man.
What was it like doing research in Britain when Britain became Turf Island?
Yeah, certainly, you know, I was contacted in 2018 to come over and do research, and the atmosphere in the UK was certainly substantially different in 2018 to what happened in 2021, 2022, etc. When the UK became a significantly less trans-friendly place to live. But I didn't experience that unfriendliness at my university towards trans, the unfriendliness towards trans people. I was accepted, and in my run club there, I was accepted, and I didn't in general experience that, and I am fortunate to have passing privilege. So, I didn't tend to experience the sort of deterioration on a personal level, but it was certainly discouraging to see that, and even though I was living in the UK, I certainly was back visiting regularly the US, and I did lots of interviews in the US, and I was very much aware of what was happening in the US, and the reality is it's the same groups in the US and the UK that have been pushing against trans athletes as part of their overall push to hurt all trans and in fact all queer people. While the paths that this discrimination took in the UK and the US were different, they followed a fairly similar timeline. And so I was certainly well aware of what was happening in the US when I agreed to move back in 2023. And of course, I was hoping that Trump was not going to win an election.
With a stroke of my pen on day one, we're going to stop the transgender lunacy, and we will keep men out of women's sports.
You came back for a specific reason more than anything else, because Nike was putting it up saying, we want the real on what's going on with this issue. So we're willing to put in the study.
So the study was actually formulated and founded by Dr. Catherine Ackerman, who was at Boston Children's Hospital at the time. And Kate Ackerman. I've known Kate since 2018, and she asked me to come back for the study, and the study was it was a multicentric study of fitness test results in trans adolescents, and while there's limited data on trans adults, there's no published data on trans adolescents and their athletic capabilities. So this was an exciting study, but moreover, when I talked to Kate about my place in the study, she said that that if I looked after the study in the three Western sites, which were University of Colorado, Oregon Health and Sciences University, and Stanford University, that I could live anywhere out west I wanted to. And I had a house in Bend, Oregon, and I love Oregon. I still think of Oregon as my home. And so the opportunity to return to Oregon and to work on this study made it very, very attractive to me. And as I say, I've known Kate since 2018. The endocrinologists at Colorado and at Oregon Health and Sciences were also friends of mine, and so it was a very, very attractive offer from a lifestyle point of view in 2023. Obviously, things deteriorated pretty quickly once I got here, and the haters found out that Nike was sponsoring this study and put pressure on them. As you say, even a certain U.S. senator,
Our good friend Tommy Tuberville.
Teams across this country now that are turning trans.
Yeah.
Women's teams, they're turning trans. And that's going to be a situation where it's going to pick up speed because these woke globalists are pushing these kids to say, if you can't compete in men's sports, let's just transition and say you're a woman.
When the trans women are compared to the cis men, there's a greater than 3 standard deviation difference in the two groups. So
What was it like going toe to toe with John Pike? Right next to each other.
It's certainly not the first time that John and I have gone toe to toe. So I was certainly prepared for how he behaves, and I think that anyone who watches the video of that will certainly see that I was well prepared for what I was going to expect.
Where should I have played that would have been safe and fair for me?
In an open category.
With the other 5 trans women who play in the country?
In an open category.
Okay.
Yes, not in the female category.
You
spelled it.
Yeah.
No, I mean an open category. I think you've read my work, Joanna. I think you know that I've argued for this on a fairly consistent basis. I'm in favour of an open category which is not dependent on sex or gender identity.
We call that separate but equal in the States. We tried it in a couple other contexts and it didn't work out. So.
Why do you think that viewpoint has gotten so much traction? I mean, this idea of this open category, which for me, as a trans athlete, as a trans person, I find it to be an insult.
The suggestion that, we'll just let trans women compete with the men and then they're included is the suggestion. But the trans women aren't men, don't compete like men, don't look like men, and would, it would bring trans women into an arena where they're not welcome, not wanted, in danger, and as you say, I think it's an insult to suggest that this is a workable solution. I think it's the very worst solution that you could come up with.
And there are some on all sides that have had a lot to say about something you said.
John's suggestion is to have a women's and an open category. Yeah. And the open category will be 99% cisgender male. And so what you are asking is for trans women to compete in a category which is virtually entirely cis men and just call it an open category. Most trans women, myself included, would rather quit their sport than to compete in such a category. And if you require trans women to compete in an open category, then you will be excluding trans women from sport.
You said it right out there, and I give you a lot of credit for having the guts to do it, because it's actually very true in my view that trans women would rather quit sports than be called men and have to compete as such. What led you to put it out there? Well, and secondly, for those who are saying that is damaging to the cause, what would you tell them?
I know it's true. I know, for instance, I have trans athlete friends all over the world who if they're not allowed to compete in the women's division, that they've just quit their sport. And I don't necessarily need to list their names here, but there are several trans athletes that have done that, and others I know have expressed that opinion, and so the suggestion that renaming the men's category as the open category, and saying that trans women can compete in that category, that's just not a workable solution. You know, the number of men in the category will dwarf the number of trans women. If a trans woman does enter into the men's category, she's going to look so out of place. She won't be competitive. She won't be welcome. It's just not a solution. So I said it because it's true, and I'm not sure why people would say it's damaging to the cause. It certainly, I guess you could say those who hate trans people will push for this solution even more because they know they could push trans women out of sports, and I guess perhaps you could say that's damaging to the cause. But I would hope that people would realize that this this just is not a workable solution. And the only people who will think that this is a good solution are transphobes.
The exit question in two parts. Part one, if gut reaction to now that they have banned trans women, now they're saying no women that fit the mold can play. With Caster Semenya now retreating from her legal case, what's your thoughts on now the focus shifting to athletes like Amani Karleigh?
The issue of who should or shouldn't be eligible for the female category is certainly a complex question with lots of nuance. But I think reducing it to say that anyone with a Y chromosome is not allowed in women's sports, I think is a gross oversimplification. I substantially disagree with with that suggestion, and I certainly hope that the IOC doesn't go down this path. We will see what happens.
The exit question, part two. If Johanna Harper was in charge, what would regulations look like at the base?
Okay,
what would regulations look like?
So there would be there would definitely be a substantial split in the regulations with prepubescent athletes, with athletes, and maybe athletes is too strong a word, people who want to play their sports in a recreational manner. I would say we should allow self-selection into whatever appropriate gender category best fits for that individual. I would say at the levels where there's no money involved, including scholarship money, there's no drug testing of anyone else, then we shouldn't be subjecting trans athletes to any enhanced scrutiny. If we're not scrutinizing the other people who are playing, then let's not scrutinize trans athletes either. Let's let trans athletes self-select. And then for elite sport, while I don't know exactly what the regulations would be if I were in charge, they would, however, require trans women to undergo an appropriate period of gender-affirming care, including testosterone suppression, before competing in the elite category, in the elite female category. Beyond that, would those rules vary from sport to sport? Possibly. Would they vary from person to person? Maybe. There's a lot of nuance that is possible there, but I would say in general that in most cases that once a trans woman had typical female testosterone values for a specific period of time, then that trans woman would probably be allowed to compete against other women at whatever level of sport, as high as the Olympics or professional sport or whatever. But as I say, it would be subject to certain caveats.
And I thank you for your voice and what you've given this discussion.
You're welcome, and I'm not planning on going, well, when I say I'm not planning on going anywhere, I may well be going somewhere in a physical sense, but I am, I plan to continue in this area, and I plan to continue to publish, I plan to continue to speak, in both academic and non-academic settings.
Special thanks again to Johanna Harper, Ph.D. Always good to have your wise voice in the discourse. Ending things with Karleigh's commentary tonight. And first, a memo again to Jennifer Say, the CEO of Transphobia's official fashion brand, XXXY. Now, I gotta know this. XXX, why are you getting in bed with Clay Travis? Come on, really? You see, after the Elizabeth Eddy op-ed, XXXY is offering $10,000 to the next NWSL player who wants to be a misogynist and a racist and support sex testing. Somebody else kicked in another $5,000, and then Clay Travis, yes, that Clay Travis, said he'll match it. So now, the going rate for Transphobia, as I wrote in Outsports this week, $30,000. Now, I know some people may be sliding into my social media with things to say, don't waste your time. Because once again, you can't protect what you don't respect. But I don't get it. Come on, Clay Travis. Really? Really, girl? Really? You know what? As Hope Giselle says, sometimes you got to call a thing a thing. And what this is a very stupid thing to do. Come on. You say you're about protecting women's sports. And then you line up and hold hands with a misogynist who's never had a kind thing to say about women's sports. Don't believe me? Oh, remember what he said about the WNBA?
And when my boys state champion teams kicks the crap out of the WNBA champion, my overall point will be made, which is boys shouldn't be competing in women's athletics because boys are bigger, stronger, and faster, even high school boys.
I get it, Jennifer, I get it. Transphobia wasn't enough to sell some overpriced hoodies, so now you had to dip your toe last week in racism. You know the things you said about Barbara Banda. Yes, we have receipts. But this is straight up misogyny. Lining up with chauvinists and misogynists, getting funding from them. Come on. Really now? Really? You can't protect what you don't respect. But I'm going to end this show on a happy note. I'm going to give some trans joy tonight. Back in June, we gave you the story of Anaya Bangar. She was an up-and-coming cricket prospect in the junior and the pro ranks in India. Transitioned about 4 years ago. She's the daughter of Sanjay Bangar. Sanjay Bangar is former Team India manager, pro manager, former professional cricket player. After going through all her things, getting her transition together, she made a decision about a year ago. I want to play again, and I want to play as my authentic self, and I want to go to the highest level possible, and that includes taking a shot at Team India. And she's been on that Haley Davidson This kid is working it, and I mean working it. The problem is the International Cricket Council has banned transgender women. They did it last year. But the Board of Control for Cricket in India has not banned trans women at the sub-elite level and at the domestic professional level. She has an opportunity to play at a high level, and she's bringing the receipts to try and overturn the ICC ban. Last year, she was a part of the Blair Hamilton study over at the University of Manchester. So she has all the performance data. She's got the receipts, and again, she's putting the work in. But as she's making her comeback, a deodorant brand in India has already got their eye on her. In fact, she's got an ad. Check it out.
This is my Maidan, a space which exists between the cricket pitch and the show set. Where one Maidan ends, another begins. I've learned my whole life to live with confidence. Between dreams, between worlds, between passions. From the pitch to the set, I just keep on showing up as myself, but never without this Rexona roll-on. It always has my back and my drums. And just like that, I'm fresh and ready to step into the next part of my day. Now I'm on my Maidan again with even more confidence, making it happen. This is my story, my Maidan. And what's yours? Tag your Maidan and share your story because Rexona might just feature you. You could also win a badge signed by Spriti Mandana. A total win. Bye now.
Now, Board of Control for Cricket, you know what you need to be doing in this moment. Stand up for Anaya. If she's good enough to play, don't all of a sudden change the rules. Don't go knee-jerk. Don't fall for the hysteria. Give this woman her shot. You are one of the biggest cricket nations in the world. You have the pull to tell the ICC this blanket ban stuff's not a good idea. You have the pull to do it. And Anaya is looking like she's building the talent to do it. The kid's working hard. Let her cook. And Anaya Bangar, anytime you want to come on Transposition Sports, I'd love to have you. And when you hit that pitch again, I'm going to be rooting for you. For Transposition Sports, I'm Karleigh Chardonnay Webb.